We're holding court this morning with Jakoyo Midiwo, who is the minority leader in the National Assembly, also member of Parliament from Game. Also, we have Miguna Miguna with us, who's a governor candidate for Nairobi. We do have also Joshua Kiptoo, who is a tutorial fellow at the University of Nairobi and also an advocate of the High Court. Also, we're joined by Kimani, Ichung'wa, member of Parliament from Kikuyu, and also we have with us Senator Kimani Wamatangi, who is the senator from Kiambu. Let's begin with you, Jakoyo Midiwo. Listening to this particular statement from Ruto, and also looking at what we have on the front page of a Star, we have, this is a different, of course, hacking back into June 30th. It says that Ruto cannot talk on corruption. This is what NASA is saying. And of course, we've seen those allegations being shuffled to and fro from NASA and Jubilee. What is the story? Who is fooling who?
You know, of course, politics world over is funded by businessmen. The only problem in Kenya is that there is no disclosure. The intention of business community in business is that they hope for a government that will enable them to do business, not to steal. In the Kenyan case, is the businessmen are driven by either ethnic jingoism or by ability to capture the state power so that they can steal. But if our William Ruto would not be talking like that, because I think that takes us away from the debate. It's only 30 days to elections. I think there should be better public debate about the future of this country than to treat the country to this. Even Kalonzo, even Raila. I think the debate needs to move a notch higher. I have said before that for you to be saved, you must agree you are a sinner. This country has too many thieves. Too many people who are, this 80-20 principle you are talking about, where 20% own 80% of wealth. I think it's more than more like 98-2, where 2% think look at government as a way of capturing wealth. I would ask my friend William to desist from it, because if we were to talk about graft, I think he would be on the receiving end a lot. Thank you.
Right. Let's hear from Miguna Miguna.
Debarl, I'm happy that the country is finally grappling with real substantive issues.
Yes.
And I'm happy for the first time that the Nation Media Group has decided to hold this issue front and center and to make it a matter of public discourse. This is what I've been looking for. I don't want to call it state capture because it seems to vanish to clean the crooks. It is a cabal of racketeers and crooks that have captured all instruments and institutions of state, plus those that are placed in positions of responsibility. Because it is not rulership the way that Wanjigi has been quoted. Wanjigi is a crook. Let's call him who he is. Let's not equivocate with Jimmy Wanjigi. Let's not do what Kalonzo did. Say a prominent Kenyan businessman. What does he do business in? How did he get into business? How has he made his money? When you say he's a tenderpreneur, what is he tendering? He's selling air and stealing our public resources. We must call him out. And this demonstrates one thing, and we must say it as it is, that Kenyans must move away from parties, these fictional constructs, because now there is no difference from the clips that you have played between NASA and Jubilee. Ruto has been said to have been the one who took Jimmy Wanjigi. to meet with Kalonzo Musyoka. Kalonzo Musyoka in return is saying that it is, Kalonzo Musyoka is saying it is Ruto. Ruto is saying it is Kalonzo Musyoka. I know the truth, all right? All these people were involved with Jimi Wanjigi leading up to 2013. So let them not lie about the fact that this person brought this. By the time I left the office of the Prime Minister, Jimi Wanjigi was a frequent visitor already. And Jimi Wanjigi was already funding Professor Saitoti as well. Jimi Wanjigi has been writ large. He's been everywhere in terms of where dirty money is made. He was there during Moi's Kanu. He was there during Kibaki's NAC. He was there during the Grand Coalition. He's there during the Jubilee administration when it came to power. He's now in NASA. So he metamorphoses whenever he smells blood. That is the nature of a crook. And we must call out these crooks, and we must call out the crooks that are together both in power and in business. And right now, I agree with my brother Jakoyo. The governors are part of this cartel, and the national government is part of this cartel. We must give Kenyans the options, and the option is this. Leadership is about integrity of the individual leader. So somebody cannot tell you that if today I got money from a crook and I am called out on it, I should turn around to my opponents and say, he's also getting money from crooks.
Right.
If we are both crooks, we should go down. So, fagia wote. Let the public, let the voters remove all these crooks with their tentacles. And now to the media. Stop glorifying thieves. Stop putting NASA and Jubilee as the only parties and the only candidates for the presidency. Give Kurwe Court and his colleagues airtime. Let them also show you the options that they are presenting for Kenya. Don't make it look like a fait accompli between Jubilee's Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. You are selling Kenyans short.
All right.
Give Kenyans the options.
All right, let's hear from
Yes.
Joshua Kiptoo. Joshua?
Now, Debarl, if I can quote a particular saying that I think was going around Twitter a week ago, that one has no moral authority to talk about moral authority, it's exactly the case here when it comes to the two coalitions. You have a situation whereby both parties are saddled with graft queries,
yes,
in the sense that you will find NASA struggling to sell the agenda of anti-corruption fight when, for example, they are associated with such. And for Jubilee, it's even worse. They shouldn't speak about corruption. I think they have been doing so well in the campaign, keeping the corruption issue at the back burner. Bringing it to the fore, I think is disadvantageous to them. If there's one area as a coalition they have been unable to fully take control of, is on corruption. So I think both sides are tainted. Right. Secondly, it talks about the issue of, if I can just pick out the issue of campaign financing. Yes. Because when you talk about campaigning, let's be very realistic. Campaigns are expensive. All these guys here are politicians. They should tell you how much they spend per day. Right. How do you expect them to raise the money? And I want us just to be fair about this. Right. When you look at the expectations of the citizens, of their voters.
I'm sorry, but Miguna, if maybe just lean back so that I can see. Thank you. Yeah, yes.
If, for example, Kimani is to campaign to be an MP, he will confirm to you how much money he spends. In fact, the voters also want to be treated. So let's be practical and realistic. So the moment we accept that money is at the center of campaigns, then we move forward and say, how then do we raise the money? If you look at established democracies in the US, they accepted that fact. They never struggled with that fact. Accepted that fact and then move ahead and say, now parties should only be organized in raising money. Right, that it is not wrong, it is not wrong for businessmen to put money, but let there be proper disclosure. And I can say this election, these elections for the first time, this election for the first time, you have candidates raising money through popular initiatives. I can pick, for example, Boniface Mwangi. He's been doing it on Twitter and says, even if you contribute 10 bob, 30 bob, it will count. Miguna have seen in his website, he says that people can volunteer. I saw the two presidential teams, they have organized dinners. So it is a fact that if we can only make it clear and bring it to the table and say, these guys are contributing for, if you believe in a cause, if I believe in them as leaders, what is wrong in me? The only difference should be, they must be a clear rider, they must be a clear policy, in the sense that it should not be for the basis that I now go ahead and hold honorable ransom because I contributed. It should be, I'm looking for policy change. So when it comes to that, I think that is where we always just need to accept it. And finally, when it comes to the issue of corruption, Debarl, this we will only win through political will. And as it stands, the best or the easiest way we can start that is we start from the highest office. If that political will can be fused from the highest office and it dissipates towards the other institutions, we can't get it right. And I still think it is individual, If only we can start from the top. If, for example, the president, if, for example, a governor in the county takes a stand and it is seen that in my administration, corruption cannot and will not be anyway tolerated, then that is how we start winning. But we always discuss, we talk about institution, left, right, center, but we forget where it stands. It begins with the individual political will.
We don't deny the fact that there has to be a sort of funding that is coming from company.
Sure.
We know of kleptocracy that we normally talk about. But does it really matter then? I think it does matter where the source of the funding is coming from.
And that is why I talk
about
about
dirty money that is also maybe accrued from corruption and it's funding parties. Why should we as Kenyans vote this particular party?
And that is why I talk about disclosure.
With
it is simply because we have not put it to the open. Very few of those financing we are aware of. In fact, it's only the presidential dinners is what we see, and maybe for the MPs and the senators. If we can make it open and we have proper disclosure, then it is legitimate also to ask a question. Like when you are asking a question about Jimmy Wanjigi, it is legitimate because we have a reason to worry, we have a reason to to fear. If this person has been implicated, what will stop him having the same influence? It has happened in South Africa. The Guptas, they had the same influence, and you could see they could dictate who becomes a minister. Yes. So it is a fact that if we don't have proper disclosure, we won't know the individual, we won't know the powers that they have.
All right, so for us to break away from the mold of state capture, we need to have this disclosure. And if there is dirty money being flushed to the parties, then we need to question that, because as Kenya, we want to be squeaky clean where the source of money is coming from. We can't be talking about corruption, yet the funding itself is corrupt.
I think the bar, for me, really is not a question of state capture. Should be talking about NASA capture. And I think my good friend, the governor-to-be for Nairobi, has put it very well, that some of these cartels have transcended through the regimes. I think, and you had the mention that the particular individual being mentioned, Jimmy Wanjigi, right from the Moi regime to the Kibaki regime to the Grand Coalition regime and now to NASA. I think that Debarl speaks volumes as to who owns or who is owned by Jimmy Wanjigi. You can look at the figures in NASA and those who were in all those governments. You can look at those who were in the Moi government, those who were in the Kibaki government, those who were in the Grand Coalition government, and those who are in NASA today. Again, look at when this issue was raised, and the deputy president, as he said, he raised it from the investigative journalism, and credit goes to the Nation media group, because they're the ones who did the story that the deputy president was quoting. And Raila Odinga says it in that clip that you just played. Let them name one individual. The person who names that individual is none other than Kalonzo Musyoka. The same Kalonzo Musyoka now we are debating on who introduced who to who. And therefore, I just want to tell you, if you are looking for the people who are owned by these corruption cartels, look no further than NASA. And therefore, it's not a question of state capture, but NASA capture. Two, and more importantly, is a question of campaign financing that Kiptoo is talking about. Again, if you want to know the truth, and my good friend and deputy minority leader Jakoyo is here, he will tell you, we had a bill in the 11th Parliament on finance campaigning. Again, if you want to know who wanted to be owned or who owns these corruption cartels, it is ODM that went to court to stop that campaign financing bill from being actualized. Therefore, you can tell the issues that you're talking about disclosure. The nation wanted to move forward. The nation wanted to know that if people are contributing to my campaign, who is it that is contributing, how much? And therefore, we are not in a state where you get captured. The people who went to court to stop that bill from becoming an act of parliament and therefore affecting this election are those who anticipated that they will be financed by these corruption cartels. Therefore, let us not just throw around names saying this one was introduced to me by this one or who was introduced to who. We know who are the owners, and the country just needs to deduce from that. From what Miguna said, right from the Moi regime, the Kibaki regime, the Grand Coalition regime, to NASA now. And then look at NASA's activities, even going to court to stop that campaign financing bill. Why? Because they never wanted that accountability. They never wanted that disclosure to for the country to know who is funding them. I think I had Kiptoo mention dinners, the two presidential candidates. I've only seen in the media what has just been reported was on the Uhuru Kenyatta dinner. I have not seen any dinner. Therefore, again, you can tell who is being financed in a very secretive manner.
So as a country, why should we be left with Hobson's choice? That it's only NASA or maybe Jubilee who should actually be sitting or be, you know, occupying State House? We have better options. We have Third Alliance, people who are not, you know, saddled with so much baggage and, of course, corruption scandals and shuffling of blames. Why should we only stick with NASA and Jubilee, as Miguna Miguna is saying? Because all of them, we see, they're holding skunks.
You see, Debarl, two issues I would want to raise. The first is that if we are approaching this issue to talk about it as to how should we clean up campaign financing, then we can be very clear about how do either parties or individuals source the financing. But when we talk about it this way, you know, the impression we are creating the impression as though corruption only happens during campaign periods. And you see,
but isn't that the case?
The truth of the matter is this. Come on, Debarl.
But isn't that the case?
Excuse me. You can't say that.
I'm just asking a question. I'm not stating any. As a matter of fact, I'm asking a question.
Corruption for that money in the first place to be termed that it is corrupt monies or monies from corruption that are being used to finance campaigns. You know, ask yourself, for how long, since when, have these fellows been corrupt and accumulating this money? And if we want to deal with the root of the problem, then we deal with the corruption and those corrupt individuals. And ask yourself, for example, look at, for example, the individual who's been named here, and the cycle and period and time that it is said that such an individual has accumulated those monies. Ask yourself, if you are to deal with the problem of the corrupt accumulating funds for them to continue to leverage against any regime that may be in place, because that's what happens. You know, when you talk about those cartels, they are very specific. They know they don't care who will be in power next time. What they want to do is accumulate fund. They know that with monies you can move mountains, you can buy your way, you can be at the top. And two, the other issue I would want to raise is this. You see, this political posturing by politicians is what also we must call out to be the worst gimmickry in dealing with the problem. When you see a leader of Kalonzo's experience and stature standing there asking Kenyans, poor Kenyans, ati nitoboe. I mean, what is the gentleman saying? Toboa what? What he's been knowing for years. If it was worth toboring, if he is that clean, he wants to talk about corruption and deal with it, does he have to wait until it is said and claimed and affirmed that he has been a beneficiary, and he is a beneficiary of corrupt proceedings, for him to go and talk about Toboa? Look at the language used by the NASA leader himself, and I'm not really sidelining this to NASA, but they carry the burden. When you see Raila there saying that he ni unafiki, I mean, for goodness sake, if people are going to, if this country will have a new day, yes, if we are going to deal with corruption and especially the effect that funds that are derived and drawn from corruption have in determining who occupies State House or who is in leadership, then we must cut it from the root. Seriously. Yes. Because my friend Debarl, this game goes on for years. You'll find people who have accumulated years and years and years in leadership, and they simply survive on these funds, on these monies, on corrupt individuals. And that's why I would want to say, for example, what my friend here, Ichung'wa, is saying is pretty correct. Ask yourself, for example, in the 30 years that Kalonzo has been in leadership, in the 35 years that Raila has been there, in the 30 years that entire brigade of those five have been there, which funds have they been surviving on? And lastly, you see this story that we are trying to bring in, and sorry, because Miguna, as my good friend, really also brought it up and says he's one of them. You see that bit of saying that people are raising at small funds from Twitter, my friend Kiptoo and whatever. It's a gimmick of laundering. You go and get $1 billion from a crook, and then you come here and pretend that you are raising 20 bob and 10 bob and 50 bob from whatever, so that you can get an easy way of spending your $1 billion. I mean, you see, my friend, unless this is because this country has suffered a long time from people who have taken us for a ride for too long.
Thank you. Let's say for too long, but yes, what is the prime solution that we should be brought to bear?
I mean, retire these guys. Retire these fellows in NASA who have been here tricking us for ages.
For the last 10 minutes.
Or let's say from Jakoyo.
I said, Debarl, it is 30 days to elections. Most important, most critical, at a time when we have devolved corruption. Because I believe that the answer to our problems as a people will come from getting county governments, giving them a good start, corruption-free. Let us do it from down up, not from up down, because that has failed. Ichung'wa, Kimani, Wamatangi know very well that Jimmy Wanjigi fell off with the Jubilee government over the Greenfield project, which was cancelled, and the country paid the Chinese contractor 5.6 billion without working, because they didn't want Jimmy Wanjigi. They could not agree on the sharing. They fell over the SGR.
So the Greenfield, for the benefit of the public, you should say the
JKIA runway. That is where Jimmy Wanjigi fell off with this government. That is not even. It's not like Jimmy Wanjigi was not with them. Jimmy Wanjigi was part of the formation of this government. Then Jimmy Wanjigi, to be fair to him, was not part of the laptop scandal. He was not part of the NY scandal. He was not part of Eurobond. This is a presidential debate which should be telling Kenyans why we don't have unga, why there is corruption everywhere on the streets, why there is everything wrong with the financial markets. I should think, or I would have thought, that in the 21st century, this debate should have been where it affects food on our table. And I can tell you why the two gentlemen from Jubilee are enjoying what we are talking about, the opposite. It's because it has taken away the argument from the lack of unga, from high cost of living, because they would want to spend time with you. And I also think it is wrong for Raila, Kalonzo, Ruto to stay away from the issues that affect us directly and go after a trivial debate about Jimmy. You know, there are so many criminal thieves now, they belong in jail, like the one we were talking, where we started. These people must get us, because they're the people who have put themselves in front of us to choose from. They must tell us when the governors are going to jail, when the state the people who are capturing our state are going to prison. We need to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear from Miguna Miguna.
Yes, you had asked the question whether or not we will ever escape from state capture.
Yes.
That was a very good question. But implied in the question is an agonization. Like you think that you're believing as if it's so difficult to do. It's very easy to do. Mm-hmm. The first thing that we need to do, and this is what I've actually recommended even in my manifesto, we must vet the county assets, the county resources, the county land. We must vet and audit forensically the transactions, the contracts, the payments, and we will get all these cartels. And we will be able to seize back our resources that they have taken. Now, to comment on my friend Kiptoo's assertions that we all know that campaigns cost money and therefore this money has to be sourced and whatnot. In the United States and many developed countries, I will tell you what happens. There are very strict laws and there are very strict limits. Obama raised billions, but raised $20, $5, $50 from ordinary citizens. The reason why Obama won the election is because so many of these ordinary citizens supported him, and those were votes. So he banked those ones, he made the money, he campaigned within the limits of the law. In the United States, you cannot donate $1 million. You can't. You're not allowed to. You can't even donate more than $200,000 for the period of the election. So the obscenity of somebody donating, as I heard Jimmy Wanjigi threatened, that he was going to fund NASA $1 billion a week. So even the obscenity of it, the criminality of it, is so intoxicating that many of us should be vomiting at the mention of the names involved. So we cannot say, just because campaigns require money, that anybody can donate anything that they fancy.
Yes.
The moment you donate 100 million shillings to any campaign, you own that person. You own the governor, you own the president, you will dictate things.
That's a capture.
That is not allowed. Yes, I understand. But the language of capture without mentioning who was captured generally glorifies over the thieves. So let me just say this. We must emphasize the fact that if you are campaigning on the platform of anti-corruption, of ethical government, of transformation, the way NASA is doing, they must deal with their governors. They must deal with Kide Evans. They must deal with Joho, who is delivering nothing and is alleged to be transacting in drugs. They must deal with Rasanga. They must deal with the Homa Bay governor and many of their governors that are doing wrong things, so that they can give Kenyans the example of what they would do differently if they got power other than Jubilee. Let me mention this, please. Just give me one allowance. We have 75% unemployment among the youth. Kenyans, even Nairobians, don't have water. The traffic yesterday, I had to walk from the DOD to Daystar University to attend the debate that we had yesterday, because otherwise I would have missed the debate. I sat there for more than 2 hours in a distance of less than 1 kilometer, and I couldn't reach. I had just come from a hotel in Nairobi, and I was going there and I couldn't reach. I had to literally walk. So, which means that something radical must happen, and it must start with us, the voters. We must kick out these crooks and these thugs and these scoundrels and these cartels, and we must bring in leaders of integrity.
Right, let's hear from Joshua Kiptoo. This is the onus now of the public to vote out and clean up the system.
Now, you ask a question, I think, to Senator Kimani Wamatangi, and we were just caucusing with my friend about, you are asking, why is it that at the moment, for example, it's just NASA Jubilee? It is simple because of this Debarl. And I think I agree with him. He's talked about ethnicity. Our elections are ethnic census, whereby it's one group pitted against the other. If you look at NASA formation, it's a question of how many can they cobble together versus Jubilee that is presumed to be only dominated by 2. Now, that clouds or takes away the issue base. But I still feel these elections has offered a bit of a fresh air. If you look at how the NASA Jubilee contest is turning out to be, it is turning out to be an issue base in a way. The last 1 month, it was about individual. Now we are moving towards issues. So that if we talk corruption, we can look NASA into the eye and ask them, how serious are you guys? Yet amongst yourself, we see this. Previously, we wouldn't have asked that. We would have said, as long as you support NASA, you shouldn't ask about them. If you look at the deputy president and the president, you can still ask them. You guys have been in government for 4 years, 5 years. What political will have you shown? Show us what has been done to be able to slay this issue of corruption. So I think if you talk about the progress and how we make it or how we progress, I still go back to my issue. It's about individual responsibility. And I think there's a difference here. As a society, we've tolerated corruption. We've gone to bed with it. In a way, it is a social norm. Now, how do you change a culture and a social norm? It begins with individuals. You start with decisive individuals. That's why I insist these elections offers us that chance. When we will get, for example, from the county level, if we get a governor who can stand up and show that it can be done. Let me pick an example. I don't know if you remember the issue of Makueni County, Honorable Kivutha Kibwana, how he faced off with his MCS and in fact almost led to the collapse of the county government. The message sank in. And you could see voters resonate with that to the extent that in Makueni, in fact, almost the entire MCAs were voted out and the governor was easily voted back because it needs an individual to take a stand. If it comes to the national government, the day we will start from the highest office, the day it can be seen that the highest office does not tolerate, however friendly you are. I remember when the president came in 2013, he came in with that refreshing talk. I remember for the first time, a president stood up in a podium and said, corruption starts even in my office. That was a powerful statement, a very powerful statement. For a president to admit that, in fact, it had never happened. So I think if he could only have taken that and say, we are not going to, like no one will be a sacred cow, that single individual action would have changed everything. So I think political will by individuals is what we need. If we don't get that, we'll keep talking and talking and talking, but nothing happens. We don't make a move until and when individual. And I think at the moment after these elections, I want us to train our eyes on two levels of government. Right. We want the governor at the county government and the president at the national government. Those are the two institutions that will set us free. Right. They will start the conversation. They will start the action-oriented move, not just talk, action.
Thank you. Before we hear from Kimani, Ichung'wa, let's see also what you have to say on USA. Usha, she's standing by. Usha.
Right, been looking at your feedback and you do have a lot of feedback. The most popular topic today would actually happen to be the question, because that's what a lot of you have commented on, which was, do you think Kenya will ever break away from the state capture mold? And we have Johnny who says it will take many years to release ourselves from the state capture mold. But Jubilee government needs to take responsibility of the corruption mess in Kenya now and stop blaming independent bodies all times. Independent bodies in other nations are working. What's wrong? The government should wake up and catch all thieves and protect the Kenyan tax money. We also have John who says, that seems to have gotten lost. We have Kabaki Dynasty who says, who has captured the state now that Jubilee is plundering Kenya? Jimmy Wanjigi is just a calculating businessman, not a thief. We have Ali who says, who doesn't want to be a cartel in Kenya? It is a shortcut to riches. Can someone teach me the ropes? We also have Kennedy who says, we have a problem of thinking that everything must be legislated, even how to sit on borders. We have Kirimi who says, plutocracy has run amok in Kenya. Brown bahashas have emerged as official trophies of the state capture in all halls of government. We have Joe who says, state capture is perpetrated by the electorate's strong sense of ethnic identity and unethical leadership. There is John Gidanga who says, system political corruption has become a black box culture. It will probably take a mass revolution to break out of this mold. We also have Omak who says, the cartels are holding public offices. Younger cartels are also contesting for public office, so it is far from being over. We have George who says, the Jubilee Mandarins trying to sanitize their regime. Both sides are corrupt. It is that simple. And finally, we have, actually that would be all, but remember you still can get your comment through AM Live and TV. That is how you can get us. As you can see, we are live, so just head on down to our Facebook page and you are able to watch. So looking at your feedback, I think it doesn't matter whichever side people are on, that is Jubilee or NASA. A lot of people seem to think that we still are very, very far from being released from the state capture mold. Debarl.
All right, so how systemic is it is the question that we also are drilling deeper with this morning. Can we break away from this Gordian knot that we're tied in of cartels and of course state capture and dynasties in the country that it has to circle to some elite in the country? Are we operating on the Pareto analysis? Let's hear also from Kimani Ichung'wa to tell us more about this. So what is the way forward?
I think the best you talk about systemic and listening to the tweets that have just been sent. What was worrying me is one of those tweets that was asking who doesn't want to be in a cartel. For sure, I don't want to be in a cartel. And if that is the state of mind of Kenyans, then yes, it is worrying. And the question you had asked to my Senator Wamatangi here on whether it is an ethnic problem or what, I think is also a cultural problem with Kenyans that we tend to glorify corruption. Just look at the kind of people that we are voting in as governors around this country, and I want to agree with Miguna. It's people who have a reputation over the years of plundering institutions, and I have no fear of contradiction in quoting the governor for Nairobi, where Miguna is running, and many others, that indeed the public seems to glorify these corrupt people. And you will plunder an institution, come and treat them with the same money that you plundered from them, and they'll be very happy to vote you in. I'm happy, Debarl, in this campaign I've had donations of even up to 2,000 shillings from very old women, not in my constituency, even from Nyeri. I had an old lady who sent me 2,000 shillings on M-Pesa from Nyeri. Yeah. Therefore, I want in a way to agree with
Isn't that the stipend that you're taking?
If we are to move, yes. Of course there are those who've given me 100,000 shillings, there are those who've given me 200,000 shillings. And if anybody was to ask me to make a full disclosure, I have a record of who has given me what. Correct. And that is where we ought to be moving the nation to. That is where we intended to move the nation to when we came up with the campaign financing bill. And I told you, and I would challenge Raila Odinga and Jakoyo Midiwo, who is the deputy minority leader in the National Assembly. Probably Jakoyo, having been in the National Assembly and being part of the debate in the National Assembly, did appreciate the gravity of this issue. Why Raila Odinga, as the leader of ODM and now the leader of NASA, chose to go to court to block that bill, then speaks volumes, as I told you, as to who has been captured by these cartels. And I've told you, just look at the history of those people who have been in government over the years. Those who have benefited from being financed by these corrupt cartels in this country. And I want to challenge Jakoyo because he said something outrageous, that why Jimmy Wanjigi fell out with this administration was because of the Greenfield project. And he went on to purport that a Chinese company was paid 5.6 billion. Yeah. Again, Jakoyo is fond of making all manner of preposterous allegations without adducing any evidence. Jakoyo, it is only last week that I challenged you to call a press conference. Last Tuesday, I am yet to hear you call a press conference or even adduce the evidence of the things that you are alleging. Again, now you are alleging other different things. Let us honestly get serious. Don't defend Raila Odinga because you want to recapture back your game seat. Speak for the Kenyan people who would want to see a campaign that is not financed from corrupt cartels. Let us move this country to the next level. I want to pray for you, Jakoyo, that you come back to Parliament and we, in fact, ensure that we defeat this NASA capture that has been captured by these Anglo-leasing mandarins and are now even fighting in court to make sure that bill never sees the light of day. Let us legislate laws that will ensure, as Miguna said, in the US and many other countries, indeed it is true that you set a limit. That is the level, Miguna, we were getting to in this country. We had set limits as to how much an individual, a corporate, because you can also be captured by corporate organizations. BATs and breweries and Safaricoms of this world can capture a state and they run your economy. And therefore, we had set limits as to how much you can contribute. I must re-emphasize to Kenyans that those who went to court to stop this bill and from becoming law is ODM and those in NASA. And they did it with a purpose because they knew who was coming to finance them, and they knew who has all along financed them. And that is why you will see Raila, you will see Kalonzo, you will see Mudavadi and the others tongue-chewing governor from Bomet defending these corruption cartels. Let me say, Debarl, if we are to save this country, let us begin from how we finance our election campaigns. Once we deal with that, we will have dealt with corruption.
Thank you. Let's hear from Wamatangi.
Thank you, Debarl. I think just for a change of note and tone, let me take a slightly different approach from my colleagues on dealing with this problem, and take it away from politics a little bit, because you see, one can also argue, and reasonably so, that we've created a fertile ground for this country to continue to be under such influence by cartels and individuals who have amassed wealth. First, if you look at, and I think I would draw from a comment that was made by one of our colleagues, I can't remember who, in the kind of society that we have managed to build ourselves, an extremely unequal society, whereby you have got so many, the multitude of our people, the bulk of them, 98% of us, are all living at least not necessarily below the poverty line, but so many of us are, but at least in a state of want. And then you have a small percentage who have managed to accumulate wealth, either legally or illegally or whatever, but largely illegally. And the influence of those against the several who do not have and are not capable, and who would call for action, who would agitate for it, are rendered to be beggars. And that is one reason I would say has largely contributed to this being a society in the nature that we're in. Because, see, if you've got all of us with our hands outstretched, 98% of us, just looking at a few who are able then to cobble up their deals, amass their wealth, and drop and pinch a bit to each one of us, then when would popular force, when would a resolution bring this? And let me crown it by saying, look at our history. Look at our history and ask yourselves, if we would determinedly as a people and as a nation be asking, when are we going to have a clean breakaway from this direction? And our history tells you that we are neither just about to, or even willing to, or even having a mindset to. How many people within your own record of when you matured up to today have successfully in this country ever been prosecuted for being either corrupt, participating in corruption, either assets captured or seized and liquidated? Who has paid the price in this country for being corrupt? And in this format, if this will be our continuity, I will tell you, as I said earlier, don't name names of who is corrupt or who survives on corruption. It becomes a second nature. It becomes a way of survival. Right. It becomes a way of fitting in society. And so if you ask me, let us first, as we deal with the politics, also fix society. Let's fix our economics. Let's fix our equality. And say that we care more for those who don't have. And then we can talk about a proper or a better political climate for our people.
30 seconds, my director, she's on the case. We have to wind up now. 30 seconds.
Ichung'wa keeps talking about ODM going to court. That was a very bad law. Very bad law. You know, a caller there or somebody said a tweet saying, why must we legislate everything? I think Wamatangi today seems to be making a little sense. So I think we need to look for solutions. Not, Ichung'wa, think about who you are protecting. Isn't it just like 3 weeks ago that there was this mega fundraising at Safari Park where even the media was not allowed? In fact, the journalists who exposed it just did it by way of investigations, using the power of the state.
Thank you.
Jubilee held a fundraising and we don't know how much money was raised, and we don't know who gave the money.
Thank you. Let's leave it at that. Thank you. Miguna Miguna, 30 seconds. 30 seconds, sir.
Yes, we don't want agonists. We want action, and the action must start on August 8th. The citizens of this country have the will and the brain, the ability mentally, and they must kick these crooks out. These governors that are looting public coffers must be voted out, and the citizens must start afresh and vote clean leaders now, so that we start rewriting the history and the culture of this country starting August 8th.
Thank you.
Let me take this opportunity because the leader of NASA, Raila Odinga, is coming to Kiambu today to say to him, one, he's welcome, but two, that in Kiambu, to remind him that we're peaceful people, we play politics that are correct and right. I said last time to him when he's coming, let him be reminded, please do not bring along with you those fellows and hooligans who come to perpetrate violence. And two, can I invite him when he comes to Kiambu to just say two things? First, that he will concede elections if he loses. And two, to say to the people that the remarks that he was making in a place like Kajiado are out of place for a man like him, of his stature. And that Kenyans are supposed to live in this country irrespective of the ethnic background.
Thank you.
Those are the kind of things we don't hear.
Right, thank you very much.
When it comes to Kiambu.
All right, to put out the flames.